was most fascinating was when he described what a publisher recently did. This was Alaska Northwest Books, a relatively small regional press, but what they did to increase sales on a 10-year-old memoir they had, a book called Last Letters from Attu, A-T-T-U, written by Mary Brew, B-R-E-U. This is a book they've had for a long time, but by skillful, smart advertising, they managed what McCarthy called a, quote, unbelievable percentage overnight. How did they do it? Well, they realized that another book had just been published on the Battle of Attu, a historical incident, and the author was getting a lot of publicity, was even interviewed on 60 Minutes. Well, what does that tell you? There are going to be more people on Amazon and elsewhere searching for books about Attu Island. They made sure they could get a piece of that for their memoir. So first, they went online and changed the book's description on Amazon to emphasize the setting, Attu. They gave it a new, bold first line. This is what people in the marketing world call a strap line. The first line, the hook, the thing that you use to draw readers in so they'll read more information about your book. Strap lines are really important. Of course, the whole sales description, book description on your Amazon page is very important, and we're going to have a future podcast guest focusing on that. But take my word for it, strap lines dramatically improve sales. Second, they went into the metadata, the keywords listed on the Amazon page. Turned out they hadn't changed those in 10 years, so it was time to update that. Also, because the book had been out for such a long time, they didn't have any current social media posts. So they did the Facebook work. They did the Twitter work. They created new hashtags to make their book more visible. Then they launched a brief Amazon advertising campaign, what Michael's going to be talking about in the interview, for just a few days. Didn't spend all that much money. Just did it for a few days to drive more people, to cause more readers to discover their Attu Island book, and to encourage placement of their book next to this new book. They did some other things. The publisher updated the author's Amazon Author Central page, added some new photographs. Here's the bottom line. All told, they spent maybe a day's worth of marketing and about a couple $100. But the benefits were tremendous. They had a much greater reach and sales that more than covered the marketing costs. You Red Sneaker writers should be looking for those kinds of opportunities. When you can see that a new book is coming out that's somewhat similar to yours, perhaps on topic or perhaps in genre, see if you can take advantage of somebody else's marketing campaign. I know not all Red Sneaker writers have, $1 trillion to throw around for advertising or can match what some of the big 5 New York publishing companies can do. But here's a way to economically bootstrap onto other people's dollar bills and perhaps increase the visibility of your title, even if, as in this case, it's a book that's been out for a good long time. My interview is with Michael Beverley of AMS AdWerks. That's AdWorks, W-E-R-K-S. The company specializes in advising and managing Amazon advertising campaigns for authors. These guys know their stuff. And since Amazon advertising is considered the most effective book advertising available today, what he has to say should be of keen interest to everyone. One word before we plunge into the interview. I did this interview by Skype. Why? Because Michael's in Guadalajara, which is a long ways from where I live. And so the quality of the interview is perhaps not quite what you may be used to hearing on this podcast, but I think you can still hear him loud and clear. Here's Michael. Michael, thanks for being on the podcast.
Hey, thanks for inviting me. I'm happy to be here today.
How's the weather in Guadalajara?
The weather here is fantastic. So I'm making a slight sacrifice by being in the office at the moment.
That's what I figured. I appreciate it. All right, my standard opening question. If you had one piece of advice to offer an aspiring writer, what would it be?
Okay, my standard answer for this is real simple. If you're looking to be a writer that's making a living at writing, then my advice is to pick a genre that you're well read in, that you completely understand and you enjoy writing, and write a series. It is very difficult to market a short catalog, and it's almost impossible to market, especially on the pay-per-click sites, a single standalone book. There are a few exceptions, but the general rule is a deep series in a genre which you are confident and you can meet the expectations of the readers will lead to the ability to earn money. That advice is for somebody that wants to be a career novelist. If you're not concerned with that and it's more about art, then obviously it's a different answer.
In my experience, most of the Red Sneaker writers would not object to occasionally seeing some money from their work, even if that's not the main thing that drew them into it. But sometimes that can be challenging. There are all kinds of series out there. Saying that you're going to write a series isn't really limiting anybody at all, do you think?
No, there are some people that looked more at the Stephen King model, and that can work if you're a 1 in a million writer and people just love your voice, and you can write things that people don't mind, say, genre hopping a little bit. But by and large, people really do love series, and this is true even if you look at, say, a Netflix production or any of the good series that are out there. A lot of people, and I include myself in this, I won't even start watching something on Netflix unless it's dropped a couple seasons. Like, I'm pretty picky. If it hasn't hit 3 seasons, I just assume it's not good. So when I'm looking for a new writer to try their catalog, if they don't have a decent series, I just assume, and this may be a bias on my part, but I just assume they haven't had their chops yet. They're not up to par, and they haven't developed the sense of story that I want. And the thing is, if you really get into a writer's work, you want more. I mean, it's not unusual to read 7 or 8 or 10 books like all in a row if you find somebody new that you just love.
Right. Well, that's the key to the Stephen King thing, do you think? Don't you? I mean, he sort of is writing a series. It's just not a series character. The series is Stephen King horror. You know it's going to be creepy and have...
Yes. Well, this is true, but ironically with him, my favorite works by him are like Dolores Claiborne and... The Green Mile had a little supernatural, but Dolores Claiborne didn't have that. Like, it wasn't horror. And Shawshank Redemption. So Shawshank Redemption isn't even scary or horror or anything supernatural. It's just a great story.
That's true.
So if you're a storyteller on par with, the best in the world, you can write standalones and people will read your books and go from 1 to 1 to 1. Most of us mere mortals aren't Stephen King, so we need to follow the J.K. Rowling method or the Michael Connelly method or the Janet Ivanovich method and give the readers, Sue Grafton had this going back to like the late 70s, I think. A is for alibi, B is for burglar. People love this. They love to go. They love to know that there's this character they're getting to know has an ongoing story and will continue. So when that comes to advertising, which is what my business is in, I've noticed that the people the ads that get the most clicks, one of the factors is you're advertising a series. If you're advertising just a single book, the interest that you get even on the front end is way, way less. And the way the algos work, they'll tend not to even show those ads very much. So you're almost dead in the water marketing-wise before you even start.
Well, let's take that marketing discussion from the beginning. What are the things you recommend authors try to promote their books? What works and what doesn't? Okay,
well, what happened to me going back a few years ago, I was actually trying to be a novelist. Like I wanted to, I started like many people listening to podcasts about this new frontier of indies. And so I tried a lot of different advertising. And at the time, I didn't realize I was trying to advertise 1 or 2 books, and I was making the mistakes a lot of people make. It's hard to get interest in that, so you assume something's wrong when the reality is it's just you're competing against an immature market. It's hard to get people interested in your debut novel when they're being shown advertisements for 10 and 12 book well-established series. So now as a mature promoter marketing in Amazon. The problem with the question you just asked me is I don't know outside of Amazon. Like I can give you anecdotal stuff. Like there's some people tell me Facebook works. Almost everybody, if they get a BookBub, they're happy. So that works. I know some of the newsletters, newsletter swaps, and also like the paid newsletters like BookBarbarian type things. Those all work. But I don't have data on that. I just have data and experience on Amazon.
Well, since Amazon is where most of the books are selling, it just makes sense that that would be the most valuable place to advertise. How do you get a successful ad campaign on Amazon?
Okay, so your first point is very valid. The readers, by and large, are on Amazon and they're shopping. So the way to get a successful advertising campaign goes back to the basics, and that's product. If you want to have a good advertising campaign, have a good product. What does that mean by good? It doesn't mean you're winning a Pulitzer Prize. It doesn't mean that you are spending 3 years on a novel. What it means is you're meeting reader expectations. And the reason this is important is the algorithms take a lot of things into account when they decide how much to charge you for your click in relation to others. So it's a bidding process, but it's also Amazon's right to sell you a click cheaper than somebody else. In other words, you can get better placement if in Amazon's algos your ads seem to be meeting the needs of the potential buyer better. What that translates to in practical terms, first is CTR, which is the click-through rate. So if you have a cover that matches genre expectations, it's attention grabbing, people see that, those tend to get more clicks. The next thing is the product page. Is the blurb good? Is the blurb a selling blurb and not a narrative blurb? And also, do you have good reviews, meaning a high rating, and a lot of reviews? Now, this is hard for beginners because they want exposure, they want people to see their work. And if they try to advertise when they have 3 or 4 or even 10 reviews, it's very difficult because the potential shopper is seeing a giant carousel, multiple carousels, multiple ads. And if there's a book with 2,000 reviews and it's 4.5 stars and it's in a series of 15 and it's in the same genre and you're competing with that as a newer writer, you end up getting killed on the click rate because Amazon will charge you more for the same space the other guy's getting, and readers will tend not to click on your ad over the other one simply because it's more appealing to people to know, hey, I have an established writer with thousands of reviews and he's got a series that's 15 books long. That's the one they're going to click on, and that's what we see in the data. So one of the things to remember if you're trying to start out, this is one of the things I have to tell a lot of people that send me an inquiry email about my services. If you don't have a decent catalog yet, advertising on Amazon is just going to cost you money. It's not going to make you money. It's going to hurt. And then it's going to be frustrating because in order to get any amount of impressions, you're going to have to start bidding higher and higher and higher. And I see a lot of people make that mistake. I can see it in the carousel. Like a new advertiser will pop up in the top of the carousel, and I know what they're paying because I know what it costs to get there. And I know they don't have the catalog to support those bids, so I know they're losing money. And of course, their ads end after a week or two.
Sure.
And the big advertisers just consistently get those spots. And so the winning formula, and probably the best takeaway that I can give your listeners now, if they're planning their career at the beginning, is don't put the cart before the horse. You're not ready to be bidding $1 a click on Amazon when you have 2 or 3 books. You will lose a lot of money. It's just pointless, and you'll frustrate yourself. Wait until you have the deep catalog that is capable of sustaining the cost of it before you jump in the water.
I think you touched on what seems to me the sort of inherent difficulty of running a good Amazon ad. It all comes down to keywords, having keywords that will target potential readers of your book. And yet the best keywords are going to be so expensive that it's a waste of time. You're going to end up paying more than you could possibly make.
Yes, and that's a very common mistake that beginners make because they have they have a feeling that if people just read their book, they're going to love it and buy more. And this may very well be true, but the problem is even if your first or second or third book or your first series is really, really good, until it's well developed, the cost per click is so high because you're competing against the big catalogs.